stick with us. We'll have two exciting talks. The first one is not a talk, it's a chat with my good friend, Dr. and pardon me if I butcher your name, Dr. Evangelos Simoudis. Evangelos is a venture capitalist at Synapse Partnerss. He's been an entrepreneur. He's been a business executive. He ran the BI businesses in IBM. And most recently, he's an author of a book, The Big Data Opportunity in Our Driverless Future. Maybe we can just start by telling us what's in the book.
So, thank you very much for having me here. So this book came almost by accident. About a little over 3 years ago, I started spending some time with large corporations trying to understand why they were coming to the Valley and what a VC could offer to them. And out of that, I tried to find an industry that had a high risk of disruption because of what's happening here in the Valley. And I would say stumbled, in a sense, upon the automotive and transportation industries. And out of the research that ensued, and the research took about a couple of years between the research and the writing, I came to realize that an area that I know very, very well and is near and dear to my heart, data and analytics, can play a big role. It can actually be a really big opportunity for incumbents. Obviously, startups are in this area are very data-centric for the most part, but incumbents are not. So I set off to write a book to think about what are the big issues in this area, why is it becoming what it is, and then provide almost like a roadmap for the business executives of incumbents in the automotive and transportation industries so that they can compete effectively using data.
Well, most of the audience here is experiencing kind of the changes in models of transportation. They see sort of this vision of the driverless future happening pretty soon. What are the changes happening in the models of mobility?
Yeah. So first of all, I think here in the Valley we have a tendency, and we've seen this over the years. I've been here now for close to 30 years. And to think that technologies that come out of the labs can immediately be adopted and change the way we live. And so when we talk about driverless future, we're talking about somewhere in the 30 to 50 year change, so really long horizon. But what is important to understand, and the thought process that I've developed is that first of all, we have a number of macro trends, such as population aging, pollution, and climate change, congestion, and urbanization, and mega cities. And those, for different reasons and different conditions, are starting to impact us, and they have been a very catalytic event to mobility services such as ride-hailing, such as car sharing. On top of that, you have technology improvement. So we've been talking about data. I think it's both the data that we're able to collect from sensors. Sensors are becoming cheaper, they're becoming better, they're more accurate. But also the data that we collect from third parties, for example, mapping companies, weather, whatever. So we have a lot more data. We have broadband connectivity. We heard Verizon talk about 5G, and that's an important step. We have intelligent autonomous systems that are being created by this. I will call it third wave of AI. I'm old enough to have lived through.
You did your PhD.
Yeah, but what we have now is because of the data, because of the computing and storage that is available, we're starting to finally have systems with error rates that approximate that of humans. I'm not saying that the method by which they reason is that of humans, but the error rates. So we can think about applications such as path planning in autonomous vehicles that are now getting very, very accurate, and now we can start deploying them because, as I said, because we have the storage, because we have the compute power, and all of that. So all of these technologies are making autonomous, connected, and electrified vehicles possible. I call the ACE vehicle.
So there are kind of two distinct technologies. That one is the autonomous part, three, autonomous, connected, and electrical.
Electrified.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't have to be electric. It can be hybrid electric. I mean, so I use the word electrified purposefully. So if you look at, on the one hand, these mega trends that are leading to the adoption of mobility services, and on the other hand, the opportunities that are created by ACE vehicles, I've come to the conclusion that the first adopters, broader adopters of this technology will be fleets. Fleets, right, as opposed to individuals. So ACE cars will not be, obviously, a number of us may get them because we can afford them or because we are kids.
They're kind of high end.
But the broader usage is going to come from fleets. And once you make this conclusion, there are three shifts that are taking place. The first shift is consumers are starting to think from moving from a car ownership centric model to a hybrid model that combines car ownership with car access. Okay, so that's shift number one.
Car ownership with car
access. Right. So car access to mobility services. And mobility services could be everything from ride-hailing to multimodal transportation. The second shift is that which the automotive industry is starting to make right now, which is they need to move from a business of designing and manufacturing cars. I mean, if you think of what the OEM is doing today, is they design cars, they manufacture them by and large, and then they generate demand and they create distribution. The sale is done by the dealer. But in this new reality of hybrid model that combines ownership with access, the OEM needs to move from this design manufacturing to being in the insights business. And they need to be in the insights business because the public no longer wants to just go from point A to point B. They want transportation solutions. And there are some important lessons in the airline industry that now the terrestrial transportation needs to start adopting. Okay? And the third shift is what the mobility services company themselves, particularly the transportation network companies like Uber, will need to make. And that shift, in order for this to work, in order for us to have fleets of autonomous vehicles, these guys need to move from TNCs to fleet operating companies. So today, companies like Uber rely on having networks of individually owned cars.
Individuals own their cars and
Right.
Uber kind of brings them together.
Right. And in order for the autonomy to work, and there are many advantages that autonomous cars offer to fleets, and that's why Uber is very interested, that's why Lyft is interested in all of these companies. But in order for them to be able to do that, they will need to move to this
Do
fleet.
you think it's an Uber-like entity that owns the fleet, or is it an entity like Ford that owns the fleet and delivers the car as a service?
That's a very good question. So, first of all, the fact that I say that they need to be fleet operating companies, as I call them, doesn't mean that they do this exclusively. So, again, the global ride-hailing companies may offer TNC behavior, what they're doing today in certain cities. They may offer a combination of TNC and fleets of autonomous vehicles in other cities. And I think particularly in mega cities, cities that have over 10 million population, particularly in mega cities with then with a sparse population like Los Angeles, where they're very spread out, you may end up having that combination of both network of individually owned vehicles, which may be traditional vehicles, and then fleets of ACE vehicles. And that, of course, will create a very different value chain. And that's, I think, it's a big opportunity, because you no longer will be thinking of the value chain that we have today. And essentially, today we have the pre-sale value chain and the post-sale. But we will have a value chain that brings together the car with the autonomous platform provider, with the fleet operator. We may have a fleet management, maintenance company, and then potentially even the equivalent of a GDS, which I think GDS are the reservation systems at airlines, and have the equivalent.
Someone could do reservations and get this. So kind of a lot of disaggregation and reaggregation, but in different ways.
Right. So I think there is a big opportunity to disassemble these established value chains and reassemble them with both new players coming in, but also some good opportunities for the existing players, depending on what path they want to take.
I have one question, and then we'll open it to the audience. So how do you see this? So we've talked a lot about sort of the equivalent of car, but sort of the next generation of car, what you call ACE. How do you see this competing with Elon Musk has other ambitions and other visions of transportation, and you see also people talking about the future of transportation. How do you compare those technologies that are emerging?
Yeah, so I think that I do part of the work, particularly with New York City, and I think certain large cities around the world, Singapore is another good example, Oslo, Helsinki, certain cities are already accepting that the future is multimodal transportation. And again, we're talking today about data and AI. There is a big role to play there in terms of coordinating all that and allowing the consumer to have transportation experiences or transportation solutions, right? Again, a great analogy is what's happening with the airline industry. When I just came back from Austin, when I went to book my ticket, they asked me, whether I want to ride from to the airport, whether I want to, if I don't want to ride, whether I want to park my car, what happens at the other end, if I want an hotel, all of that, and it allows me to create an entire experience, an entire journey. When I want to go to San Francisco today for a meeting, I just go into my car. I cannot call BMW to say, hey, here's my day in San Francisco, what do I do? So we will be moving in that direction. And that's why I said the OEMs will need to start thinking about being in the insights business, and that's why I see the opportunity, as opposed to just being in the metal bending business.
Let's take a question. Eric.
Yes, I don't need the mic actually. You said that for consumers like you and I, the transition might take like 2 or 3 decades.
What I'm saying is
My
that
question is it going to go faster for logistics and trucks in particular, because that can be simpler?
this is an excellent question. So let's start with the consumer side. I said that the transitioning to an environment where we have thousands of autonomous cars on the road, and I'm not talking here, when I talk about autonomous, I'm talking about what is considered either autonomous or completely driverless, so level 4 or level 5 autonomy. There are certain lower levels of autonomy in the cars that we drive today, okay, depending on when you bought your car. But I'm talking strictly about the highest levels of autonomy where there is no need for a driver to have control of the vehicle. Okay. So in those cases, I said that it would take a couple of decades to make that transition. There are many reasons for that. We can talk about it on the sideline if you want. And in fact, even this model that I am talking about, this hybrid model of combining car ownership with car access, I believe is going to be an intermediate model, maybe for the next 15 years, before we go to a fully autonomous, preponderance of car being autonomous. Now, to the second part of your question, I think that life is becoming easier particularly for long-haul trucks. And there are already a number of experiments. And I also think that there's a catalyst for that adoption, and it's coming from the shortage of long-haul drivers, truck drivers. So I think that's going to cause this part of the logistics industry to start thinking more carefully. What was also interesting, by the way, as I was writing the book, is that whereas for passenger transportation, we think about urban environments where this, that's what I said about mobility services, where this technology can be applied. For logistics, it may actually be suburban or rural environments where they will find the first application. So think of the tests that companies like UPS or FedEx are doing, where they have their trucks in combination with drones delivering packages to remote areas. Right? So it will be interesting to see how the logistics part of the business versus the consumer movement part of the business develop around the same set of technologies.
I have a question.
And you have the mic.
Yes. If you really think about the autonomous transportation, so it's been there for a very long time, because every time you fly, there's autopilot. So you are reliant on that. But what do you think of? Because one thing that is I was talking to Anand Soshua, apparently his company got bought by Intel today. Saying
15.3 billion.
Yeah. Saying that we are there with the highway driving, but we are not there with the street driving. And the reason for that is human brain is a zero-shot learning machine or a one-shot learning machine. So there are a lot of common sense reasoning techniques that you have to apply for the existing machine learning systems. And that is not there yet, and it's an extremely complicated thing. So do you really think that we are there yet for like a fully autonomous transportation, be it passenger, be it non-passenger? Because you have to have separate tracks, in my opinion, for the longest time for these autonomous transportation, and not let them intermingle with the existing one.
And wait till you come to India, cows and autonomous.
So I actually think, based on what I've seen today from both startups and larger corporations, I think the technology for having level 4 or level 5 will be with us pretty quickly, maybe in the next 4 or 5 years. The bigger problem will be, as I said before, broad adoption. And I don't think it will be so much on the demand side, because, as I said, the economics, particularly for fleets, are quite compelling. The problem is, how do you incorporate it? It doesn't have to be cows. Just try to drive downtown Manhattan, right, where you have drivers with specific behaviors, and then autonomous cars, and fingers pointing and all that. So yeah, let's take one more question.
One final question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So in the previous session, we heard Anil answer the question about who owns the data pretty affirmatively, that it's the consumer. I think in this ACE world, the ecosystem is much more complex. You've got multiple parties, from the tier 1 supplier who makes a part, to the OEM who makes the car, to the fleet operator in your vision, to the consumer, to the insurance company. Who owns the data in that kind of scenario?
in the book I talk about two things. First, I said that if the OEMs, the incumbent OEMs want to play ball, they need to develop a data sharing culture. And I actually gave the example of the telcos, what they could not do because of the walled gardens that they had initially erected. But the second part is exactly Anil's point, which was the consumer owns the data, right? And I think what will be important is for the various constituencies to develop the corresponding value proposition to first of all see the advantage of bringing together their data. So there is a lot of data, for example, that Daimler has that Uber would want, and vice versa, of course. I mentioned this too because they've announced a partnership. Right? But there's also a lot of data that Here has, which Daimler and Uber would want. And there is a lot of data that the Climate Corp has that the neighbor. So a lot of that, I mean, it depends on what kind of value propositions they create, because there is a wealth of analytic applications that can be built. Again, one of the points I make is that everybody thinks about path planning as the application for autonomous vehicles. And in fact, it is important because you cannot do path planning, then you do not have an autonomous vehicle. But there are several other applications that can be developed around the data that is collected and can be collected, which I hope people start looking into.
Thank you. I'm waiting for the day that